This is the Orient Kanno. Now this vintage-inspired dive watch sets itself apart from Orient's other dive watches with its use of clean lines. And depending on who you ask, those simple clean lines are either eternally classic or just too pedestrian. This is the Orient model number RAAA0009L19B. Now at the time of this video, you can find this watch at Joma Shop for $194 US. Past the Watch has the red version for $207, Amazon has it for $214, and Orient has it for a whopping $305 US. Now a lot of people would say that Orient has actually taken the place of what Seiko used to be. They offer a good quality dive watch for a good price, and I tend to agree. There's a lot to like about Orient. They make their own in-house movement, they're reliable, they're dependable, and I am definitely a fan of Orient. But lately, there have been a few things that have reminded me that buying an affordable watch is still a bit of hit or miss. There are a few things about this watch which I personally don't like, but I do think it could be as simple as returning this watch, buying the exact same watch again could solve those issues. And that is what I mean by hit or miss. Hey guys, as always, if you like these videos, please consider subscribing. It would really help out the channel. Now let's get on with the review. The case construction is stainless steel with a diameter coming in at 44 millimeters, not including the crown. On the side, we have a lug-to-lug distance of 50 millimeters with an overall thickness of 13 millimeters. Now 44 millimeter diameter may sound a bit large, and this is 2 millimeters larger than the Kamasu 2, but it does wear small and I do not have an issue with it on my 7-inch wrist. There is a generous downturn to the lugs, making this 50 millimeter lug-to-lug distance quite wearable. There is a brushed finish on the top of the case done in a radial direction, while the side of the case has been given a high polished finish. Now those high polished areas are, of course, going to be a fingerprint magnet. There are no chamfered edges where the top and the sides of the case meet. However, that edge has been nicely finished off, keeping a distinctive edge while not at all feeling remotely sharp. Even the edges of the bottom of the case have been nicely finished off here. But there are two things going on with this case. The first is my pet peeve about the brushing on the lugs not being done in the same direction as the brushing on the bracelet. I know, I'll get over it eventually, maybe. But the second thing is that where the case and the bracelet meet up, it is not flush. The bracelet sits down maybe 2 millimeters short of the top of the lugs, and it is very noticeable. I definitely feel an edge when I run my finger over this. And visually, that area draws attention to itself to begin with, because the brushing is done in a different direction. In my opinion, it's just unfortunate that the brushing draws attention to an area that I think needed a little bit more quality control. Now this is one of those things I was talking about earlier, that perhaps a different Orient Kanno might not have this issue. Or at least maybe that 2 millimeter difference might only be 1 millimeter, hopefully less. But right now, on this specific watch, it is very noticeable, both visually and tactily. And even though we're talking about a watch that's available for under $200 US, I'm still disappointed because this is Orient. And honestly, I just expect more from them. Moving on back of the watch, we have a screw-down case back, which helps this watch achieve its 200 meters water resistance. The text on the case back reads, "Water resistant 20 bar, stainless steel, movement Japan," and etched in the center is Orient's 2 dolphins circling a wave illustration. And inside that case, we have Orient's in-house F6922 automatic movement. And that has 22 joules, beats at 21,600 beats an hour, has a 40-hour power reserve, it does hand wind, and it does hack. Now Orient claims an accuracy on this movement of -15 to +25 seconds per day. Now on a side note, this movement was originally built to replace the older 46-943 movement. There is a signed crown at the 3 o'clock position with a vertical knurling pattern on it. Now it is approximately 7 millimeters in width and 4 millimeters in depth, and it is nicely nestled in between those crown guards. Now this is a screw down crown, so you do need to unscrew it to hand wind it. To set the time, simply pull it out to the first position, rotate it, sets the date, turning it the other way sets the day of the week, pulling it out to the second position stops the second hand, and sets the time. Moving on to the face of the watch. When I first got this watch, my first reaction was, wow, this looks impressive. It has simple, clean lines, and it is highly legible. And the dark blue color looks absolutely top-notch in my opinion. Starting on the outside, we have a unidirectional 120 click stainless steel bezel with an aluminum matte insert and alternating hash marks and Arabic numbers. At the starting position, we have a downward pointing triangle, which unfortunately does not have a lume pip. The coin edge bezel itself is very possibly the easiest bezel I've ever rotated. The difference between rotating this and the bezel on the Orient Mako is night and day. I can even rotate it with one finger. It is buttery smooth. But unfortunately, it's not all good things to say about the bezel. There is backplay here, and in addition to that, there are some alignment issues. When I align the downward pointing triangle to the 12 o'clock position, it is actually in between clicks. One click before or after, and you see how the marker on the bezel at the 3 and 9 positions don't align with the indices. Now personally, I find this unacceptable from Orient, and it is a huge letdown. I expect better quality control from them. That said, I do think that there's a very good chance that a different Orient Kanno might not have this issue. In general, I do believe that Orient quality control is better than this. On the inside of that bezel, we have a white minute track printed directly on the dial, and further in, we have applied metallic indices surrounding the dial, which have some really nice depth to them, adding a bit of texture feel to the dial. At the 12 o'clock position, we have rectangular markers that have been doubled up side by side, making a strong visual statement. Also at the 12 o'clock position, we have the Orient logo as well as the word automatic done in a script font. Moving down the dial closer to the 6 o'clock position, we find the words water resist and 20 bar. The day-date window at the 3 o'clock position is printed black on white, and in my everyday use, I had no issues with its legibility. There is a white horizontal line on top and bottom of the window instead of the usual metallic outline, keeping with the clean aesthetic of this watch. The dial here is a dark blue color and has a nice sunburst effect to it. The dark blue color against the white minute ticks and the lume, of course, makes this watch extremely legible, even at a glance. Now the minute hand here is very nicely sized, meeting up with the edge of the minute track, but not extending into it. The same can be said for the running second hand. The two seem to be the exact same length, and it's nice to see that level of attention to detail. The arrow-shaped hour hand is significantly shorter from the minute hand, as well as being wider, and this makes telling time at night a no-brainer. The green color lume here is quick to glow with the slightest exposure to light, and not surprisingly, easily passed my everyday lume test. For anyone who might not know, my everyday lume test consists of wearing the watch, getting an average day's light exposed to it, setting it alongside my bedside table at night, and then seeing if I can tell the time at 4 a.m. Again, this watch easily passed. Now, one of the complaints I often hear about this watch is the lack of sapphire crystal. Unlike the Kamasu, which comes with a sapphire, this Kano comes with a mineral crystal. Honestly, I don't know what the rationale was. Maybe Orient is trying to differentiate the lineup. Or maybe they just wanted a watch that appeals to the people who actually prefer mineral crystal. There actually are a few people out there. It is less likely to shatter, and it is naturally has less glare to it. But based on the people that I talked with, most would gladly pay a little bit extra to have a sapphire crystal on this watch. Okay, we have to talk about the bracelet. Now I have a couple of things to say here, but let's start with the basics. It's 22 millimeters wide at the lugs and tapers down to 20 millimeters at the clasp. It is a signed clasp with a photo for safety and push button release. Opening it up, we have a basic press scissor section inside. The bracelet might look like it's a 3-link bracelet, but actually it's 1 link all the way across. And those links are solid with the exception of the end links, which are hollow. For the most part, I do think it's actually a fine bracelet given the money. Now keep in mind this is an automatic dive watch with 200 meters of water resistance for $200. The one big gripe I have about this bracelet, not counting the fact that it doesn't sit flush with the lugs. Okay, the second big gripe I have with this is look at the mark on the bracelet here. There is an identical mark on the other side of the case. The bracelet is actually marking itself up. At some point, most likely when it's being put on or off, the bracelet folds and that first link hits the hollow end link, and that is what is making these marks. My guess is that the edge of the center of that hollow end link has a rough edge to it and needed to be sanded down a little. It is creating a shiny spot on what is otherwise a brushed finish. And that's a shame. You know, at this price point, my bar for a metal bracelet is not set very high, and yet this comes up short. Now, it's worth mentioning here that this watch also comes on a silicone strap, and that may be the better option. So let's go over the specs for this watch. We got a mineral crystal, Orient automatic F6922 movement, a diameter of 44 millimeters, thickness of 13 millimeters, lug width of 22 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug distance of 50 millimeters. And let's wrap up by going over the pros and cons. For pros, aesthetics. The clean, simple lines does help it set itself apart from other divers. It's highly legible, you get 200 meters of water resistance, you get some great lume on it, and the automatic movement does hack and hand wind. For cons, the bezel, it doesn't align. And the bracelet, 1, it doesn't sit flush with the top of the lugs, and 2, it marks itself up. So my final thoughts on this watch. Now I was immediately attracted to the looks of this thing. Personally, I am not bothered by the fact that it's a mineral crystal at this price point. However, I would recommend going for the silicone strap and avoiding a metal bracelet altogether. Hopefully, the majority of Kanos out there don't have alignment issues with the bezel. Getting one that aligns perfectly may be a bit of a hit or miss. Okay, my friends, remember, buy whatever it is you love. It is your watch collection after all. I'll see you in the next video.